All set to head out. Got everything cleaned up and packed. I'm leaving this really cool 100-year-old cabin.
I'm gonna miss it.
I know. I really liked it. I feel like Maine is not the state for us to live in, but it's been really good visiting.
Yeah.
And if we could find a cabin like this somewhere else, I might buy it.
A little too cold. Season's too short.
Oh, definitely too cold, but...
If it was warmer, I'd be here.
So, the search continues. And it's a very nice day. I especially like the screen porch. I'm a big fan of the rocking chairs on the screen porch. Okay, got everything?
Yep, good.
Double checked, triple checked.
Mm-hmm. We lost something. It's not the day.
There's a lot of little nooks and crannies in there. I bet people forget stuff all the time.
I check behind doors and stuff. So.
Yeah. Okay, to New Hampshire.
So don't let the weight of the world slow you down. And if you search for the meaning of life, it won't be found. So take your insecurities and leave them all behind. Let's learn to make the most of our time.
We had about an hour-and-a-half drive from the Sebago Lake Cottages up to the Highland Center, where we were going to be starting our backpacking trip.
Turn left onto US 302 West.
Is he taking off?
He's Dudley's taxing.
Yeah.
Maybe he's trying to find out more about.
Cool. It is a big lake. I could see how. Oh, I guess this is like the northern end. This is more touristy. The northern part of Sebago Lake definitely appeared to have more tourist attractions, and one of the activities that they had were seaplane rides. So you could book yourself to go up on a seaplane and get a tour of the area, which I bet is quite an experience, and I bet the views are spectacular. So we'll keep that in mind if we're ever back in this area. The drive from Maine over toward New Hampshire was beautiful. We were going into the more mountainous area, so the excitement for our backpacking trip was building as we got closer to the mountains. But I have to be honest, I was also rather nervous about this trip. I was concerned about our preparation and if we were ready to do a strenuous hike. We just stopped to grab a couple things. We got ice for the cooler because we will be away from the car for about 2 days. And we got some ham and cheese to make sandwiches before we get on the trail. We have a 5.2 mile hike to get to the hut today. And we probably should have gotten started maybe a little bit earlier, but it's 5.2 miles with 1,800 feet of elevation gain. So we're going up a mountain and over to the other side to get to the hut. And the good thing is, today's the longest day of the year. So we have the most daylight. We're trying to make it there for dinner, which I think we should be okay. But just a little bit maybe nervous about this hike, especially because I woke up this morning and I usually read articles on my phone, and one of the articles that popped up was on Saturday there were several rescues of hikers in the White Mountains. One of those hikers lost his life due to serious hypothermia while trying to summit Mount Washington, and the other hikers became lost and cold due to lack of preparation for their hike. In this section of the White Mountains, because they're pretty serious hiking. It's not to be messed around with, especially when the weather isn't good. The weather can be really, really terrible any time of year in the White Mountains. And then 3 other hikers had to be rescued from Crawford Notch because they went off trail and didn't have the right stuff with them. So it's a fairly challenging area for hiking. We're lucky that the weather is good today, so that's on our side, and we have lots of daylight, and we've probably overpacked because that article made me just start shoving things into my bag, just in case. Outdoor recreation has never been more popular than it has in the past few years. And it's great that people are looking into this and trying new hobbies, But at the same time, that means when you start these activities, you definitely have to put some effort into learning how to keep yourself safe, learning what to bring. And we often see people out for a day hike that don't have anything with them. No food, no water, no extra layers of clothing. And that is very dangerous. Even if you think you're out for a day hike, what I learned when I did my wilderness first aid training is that a day hike can very easily turn into an overnight that you were not planning for when you have something as simple as a sprained ankle, which can happen so easily in the backcountry. Just wait until you see the trails that we were hiking on. The whole time we were just thinking, okay, be careful with your footing. Don't sprain an ankle. Don't fall off the mountain because you would get pretty severely injured. And when you're even just a little ways into the backcountry, it's very difficult to get yourself out. So being over prepared when you go into the wilderness is a good way to go.
It's nice. At least we're not waiting. I really thought, given that it's so late, we were going to have to wait to find parking, but...
That one's decent, right?
Yeah. Yeah, whatever you want.
Just go ahead and... doesn't matter.
During our trip preparation, we downloaded the maps from All Trails into our phone so that we would have some navigation to make sure that we were going in the right direction and staying on the trail as we headed up to the Zealand Falls hut. We parked across the street just past the Highlands Center, and we went down through the Highlands Center because the trailhead leaves right behind the train station. And as we were walking toward the trailhead, I could feel my anticipation building because this was the point where we were going to figure out if we had physically conditioned ourselves to handle the White Mountains and if we had packed correctly to be prepared for this trip. But walking through the fields of beautiful wildflowers was definitely putting us at ease, and we knew that this was going to be a highlight of our trip.
Go back here. It's always tricky finding the trailhead. It's like disorienting.
Good.
Good. All right. Here we go. Oh, we've gone 1.5.
Yeah.
And we've been going about
An hour.
an hour,
But
a
that's
little
from
less.
the parking lot.
So that was extra. Yeah, the trail is very rocky. Not as bad as Pennsylvania yet. Roots and some wet sections. We did a couple stream crossings, which are nice because I don't know if you can still hear it, but most of the trail you can hear water, which is nice.
We stopped periodically to take in the view and take a break from watching the trail and being super careful where we were putting our feet, especially because it was so rocky and there were quite a few stream crossings, so slippery rocks mean you have to be extra cautious. We were trying to strike a good balance between moving quickly so that we would get to the hut on time for dinner, but not moving so fast that we were making mistakes or tripping over things. So there's definitely a balance there.
Oh,
You'll probably almost get there around 5.
probably. Yeah. Oh, a nice little stream.
When we're on a backpacking trip, we both typically use trekking poles, and this is for a few different reasons. Trekking poles help to distribute the effort between your legs and your arms, so your legs won't get quite as tired, especially when you're carrying a heavy pack.
Good to go?
Yeah.
I guess we're going over.
We made it to the highest elevation on the trail for this day and started to go down the other side with lots more stream crossings.
Cool.
And that's the other place where the trekking poles are so helpful.
Having multiple points of contact with the ground makes your balance a lot steadier, and you are less likely to hurt your ankle or twist a knee, especially when you're climbing over slippery rocks and roots. So it can make you a little bit safer and steadier in the backcountry. We're making decent time.
Yeah.
It's
A lot of rocks.
a lot of rocks. You gotta be super careful where you're putting your feet. You can't look up and walk most of the time. One of the mistakes that new hikers will make is not taking into consideration the terrain that they're covering when they're estimating how long a hike is going to take. So even though we were only going about 5 miles, it was going to take us a little over 5 hours because there were so many stream crossings where you are moving quite slowly and there's so many rocky areas. You are just not able to move as quickly as you can if you're walking a few miles on pavement or, on your neighborhood street. This is totally different. And then when you add in going up elevation or going down where you're trying to be really careful not to put too much strain on your knees, you're going to be moving quite a bit slower than you would in normal day-to-day life. We've done about 4.8 miles, so we're getting fairly close. It's been kind of slower because it is a technical trail. You have to be so careful of your footing, and there's a lot of wet spots. But we're almost there. And if you are stopping periodically to film your trip for YouTube, you can add even more time to that because that's definitely going to make you move more slowly. As we got closer to Zealand Falls Hut, there were more and more stream crossings and wet boggy areas. And given that we were hiking toward a waterfall, we took that as a good sign that we were getting closer. Yeah, we're starting to hear people. Must be getting close. It's almost 5.
Yeah.
We'll hike to the food.
Yeah.
Overall, we did a good job conditioning ourselves for this trip, but we were starting to get a bit tired and a little hungry. Okay. 0.5.
Yeah,
Hopefully dinner's at 5:30.
Yeah. Leftovers?
Yeah, I'm sure they'll give us something to eat.
Yeah.
With the promise of food as our motivation, we made the last steep climb up the rocky area toward the Zealand Falls Hut. And almost like a mirage in the forest, all of a sudden the hut appeared. And we were quite happy that we made it. Luckily, when we arrived a little bit after 5, they were still cooking dinner. They give you some time for the hikers to come in and get settled. So we went into the bunk room. It's a lot of bunk.
What's that?
It's a high bunk.
Yeah.
Zealand Falls is one of the smaller huts in the Appalachian Mountain Club's chain of huts in New Hampshire. But luckily it wasn't completely full that night, so we were able to get a lower and a middle bunk. I actually like sleeping on bunk beds, but that 3rd row bunk was a little scary with how high it was, and there's really not much of a lip holding you in there. So hopefully you are a very sound sleeper. Yeah, rest your feet. But we got all our stuff unpacked and set up so that we were ready for some much needed sleep later, and we were excited because I've heard so much over the years of how great the food is at the huts. It is quite famous among hikers. They feed you well, and there are multiple courses to the meals, so we were super ready. See those wooden packs lined up against the wall? That's what the hut workers use to go down the mountain and carry about 50 to 60 pounds of fresh food up to the hut so that they can cook us these delicious meals. These are the bathrooms. They're very basic, running water, composting toilet, and you do not get a shower, so things are definitely a little bit rustic, but when you don't have to carry a tent and you get fed a delicious hot meal at the end of a hike, I would say that the experience of staying in the hut is completely worth it. After a delicious meal that exceeded our expectations, we walked just past the hut to Zealand Falls. And the waterfall here actually has a hydroelectric setup, so all of the electricity for the hut is powered by the waterfall that gives it its name. It's very cold. Yeah, colder than the lake. We were both feeling pretty good at this point. We made it to the hut, we had a great meal, and we knew that all of the time we spent in the gym working on our strength and our cardio to get conditioned for this trip paid off.
Is that a bottom bunk?
Yes.
Medium bunk, I can do it.
The top bunk is like death. You fall out of that, it's not going to go well.
When you have night terrors, it's not a good idea.
At this point, we were starting to feel more comfortable and confident in our backpacking skills. We made it to the hut on time. We didn't forget any essential pieces of gear, so we got to stand in front of the hut and watch this beautiful sunset for the longest day of the year. The next day, we were looking at the longest hike. We were going to retrace our steps from today and climb up the next mountain to the Mitzvah Springs hut. So we definitely needed to get a good night's rest, and we were looking forward to more of the famous cooking when we got up for breakfast.
Well, you worried about you and me, the injustice, the next president to be, the news and what you hear, your career. It's time for you to face those fears, and it's all fair to be aware, and I'll be there, so don't be scared. Just take a deep breath of air, and 1, 2, 3 to 10, you begin to focus again, and no time flies. We have enough to realize this bigger than the both of us.